Very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to yet another episode of Acfim Talks. Today, the 16th of September, 2022. Your host, as usual, Felix Kafuma, and we are discussing payment of the Democratic Republic of Congo reparation costs. I'll be joined by three guests to look at this topic, discuss it, give it justice, and probably by the end of today's discussions, many Ugandans out there would pick interest in these payments because this is taxpayers' money that is being doled out for an act where many are asking who should shoulder this burden. Is it you and I who never participated in the war and never took part in the loot, or it should be individuals being held culpable? With me, I have three guests, and all the three are regular on this edition on Acfim Talks. So it's going to be a small reunion, and it's glad that I have these three back with me again to discuss and do justice to this topic. But before we start, as it is the case usually, I take this time to invite everybody who is just joining us for the first time to subscribe to our social media platforms, because we are always live on YouTube. They'll be flashing on the screen. We are always live on YouTube, live on Twitter, and also live on Facebook, including LinkedIn. So just subscribe. You'll be getting the notifications, and you'll be able to not to miss any part of these conversations that take place every Friday, and they're proudly brought to you by Alliance for Finance Monitoring and Acfim, the Pan-African political finance outfit. Before I introduce the guests, allow me to give context to this discussion, and for anybody out there who is just joining us, or who is just hearing this for the first time, but if you've been following the news this week, Uganda paid the Democratic Republic of Congo 65 million US dollars, which is approximately 250 billion Uganda shillings, in reparations for the invasion and looting by Uganda People's Defense Forces during the Congo War between the late 1990s and 2003. This is the first installment of the five, because we're supposed to pay in 5 equal installments. And this is part of the 5 installments, which amounts to 325 million US dollars, which is approximately 1.4 trillion Uganda shillings, that was slapped on Uganda by the International Court of Justice, which is based in Hague. In February this year, like I said, 2022, the court ordered Uganda to pay its neighbor DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, a whopping 225 million US dollars for loss of life. And on part of that, also on top of that, we were ordered to pay 40 million US dollars for damage to property, and then 60 million US dollars for damage to natural resources, altogether amounting to the 325 US million dollars, which is approximately 1.4 trillion shillings. So but remember that the Kinshasa government had initially demanded 11 billion US dollars to be paid in damages. So even when they made such a whopping demand, I think court found it that would pay much less than that. What are the key issues of contention here that should be observed and inform our discussion? One is that this payment, which happened this week, was made in a such hush manner, kept under wraps, and want to find out why. Also, the bigger question is that where did the money to pay the first installment come from? We all know how our economy is struggling, the debt burden, and if you've been following, also we've seen civil servants, many of them have not yet been paid. So the bigger question is, where did the money to pay the first installment come from? And also another key question that should shape this discussion is about whether drawing such colossal sums of money from the national treasury had in any way an impact to the current dilemma government is in terms of having shortfalls to finance the budget. But also, the bigger question of concern is who should pay for the sins of what happened in Congo 20 years ago? Is it me and you, or should these acts be that were committed? Should they be? Should this figure, this amount, be levied on the individual men in the uniform that up to now some of them still live and they still live off the Congo loot? Or should it be a collective responsibility of everybody to pay for the sins of what happened? I'll call them sins of what happened in Congo. This and much more in today's episode of Acfim Talks. And once again, you are most welcome. Everybody who's just joining us. And with me, I have three distinguished guests, regulars. Let me start with Edgar Tabalo, Council Edgar Tabalo. I hope he's on set. If he's on set, let me introduce Edgar. Edgar is, I think this is the third time we're having Edgar, the second time we're having this discussion. I think it would be great to catch up on these conversations. Edgar is a lawyer and a partner at Karuhanga Tower Associates and one of the leading firms in Uganda. He's also very grounded in the regional politics. He's also specialized in intellectual property, corporate law, construction law, and insolvency, energy, oil, and gas. He's not yet on set, but when he joins us, it would be great to have this conversation with Edgar again. I'm hoping Dismas Nkunda, another colleague of ours, another regular of this show, is on set. It's great to have you, Dismas. How is that side?
We are very okay, Felix. How are you? And good to see you.
Great. It's always a pleasure to have you on this show. Dismas Nkunda is the Executive Director of Atrocities Watch Africa and is an authority when it comes to the conflicts in the Great Lakes region. He has followed the Congo incursions very, very, very closely. So it's good to have you. He also has a journalistic background. You are most welcome to Acfim Talks, Dismas.
Thanks, Felix. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And our other guest is Moses Mulondo, who is also regular on this show, Acfim Talks. Good to have you, Moses. Moses is the president for Uganda Parliamentary Press Association. He's also an economist and a journalist working with New Vision as a leading senior staff writer on the national budget, and is also a coordinator of Greater Rural Development Forum. It's good to have you, Moses Mulondo. You're welcome. Unmute yourself. I can't hear you. I need to be sure that I'm talking to Moses.
Thank you very much, Felix, for this opportunity. I am very happy to participate in this discourse. I think something good out of it will be realized.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Let's hit the ground quickly, and I'm going to start with Dismas. Dismas, we've been here before. I think the first time we had this conversation was when the court in Hague had just pronounced itself, slapped those costs on us, and we were trying to make a case of how do we get there, are we culpable, and where do we go from there. Now here we are. Uganda made its first payment, but the bigger question is, and I think even then we had a bit of a discussion around it. How does this become a problem of all Ugandans to find ourselves paying this money off the national budget? Yet it was individuals who committed these crimes.
Felix, that is an entire dissertation question, but we will hazard to be able to answer. First of all, the Uganda Army, the UPDF that is culpable in this matter is a national army. And therefore, the only thing is that we didn't deploy it. I'm hoping that Mulondo maybe will give us an understanding of the processes in Parliament on how an army is deployed. And therefore, if we didn't follow the procedures of deployment in DR Congo at that time, then there we can have other questions to ask. But the important thing is that actually what happened during that invasion, there was a commission of inquiry which the Uganda government put up, which was headed by Justice Porter. And it did find that actually there are some Ugandans, some who are still alive, who were culpable in the commission of atrocities that happened in DR Congo, the ones who bore the greatest responsibility. And they are still alive. But the point of the International Commission of Justice, the ICJ, the court, it doesn't deal with individuals. It deals with the states, interstate conflicts. And this conflict was taken to the court on the assumption that it is Uganda which has committed, Uganda but not individuals, which has committed those crimes in DRC. And it being a UN court, so Uganda had its own ways in which it could have defended itself, because I know that some countries did defend themselves, such as Rwanda. They did have their own negotiations and they managed not to be slapped with that fine. But of course, we were very slow. We thought that it was a case that was going not to happen, not to have a greater impact. But eventually, here we are, every Ugandan. So it's Uganda as a country which was sued. It was not individuals. And that's how you find that we end up having even we taxpayers who never stepped in DR Congo to plunder or even to cause the harm that was caused, are going to be able to pay out of the taxes that we contribute to this economy. So it's quite unfortunate.
Indeed, it's quite unfortunate. Moses, I don't know whether you followed this story. Actually, there was a short in the press this week. Not much was mentioned other than a bit of a write-up and a report that Uganda had paid. And many argued, like some of us who dig deeper, who double-click events, that this was one of those payments that was done hush-hush. I want to use the word hush-hush in quotes here. Yet, I remember when we were slapped with this ban, the Foreign Affairs Ministry came out and challenged, rejected. They even claimed that they would contest the judgment. So the bigger question is, what explains the concealment of this payment? Why is the government kind of like make the payment, but in closed quarters? And why is it that some of media didn't pick it up to really make it an issue? This is taxpayers' money.
Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I want to get back to what Dismas was attempting to answer. How this date came about. Certainly, Parliament never approved the UPDF deployment in DRC. And even if an attempt had been made to seek approval, certainly there is no way the legislators at that time could have approved that deployment, because it was not justifiable at all. We were at that time not in DR Congo to fight any rebel group that was threatening Uganda, but we were in DR Congo to actually support a rebel group, RCD, that was headed by two gentlemen. One was, I don't know whether he's related to Dismas Nkunda. He was Laurent Nkunda, and Professor Ernest Wamba Diawamba. And this was a very strong rebel group that was having the backing of both Rwanda and Uganda, and it was attempting to remove Kabila, to overthrow the government of Kabila. At time reached when there were some divisions that emerged, and Professor Wamba was removed by another faction, and Uganda. So Rwanda was supporting one faction, and Uganda was also supporting the faction of Professor Wamba Diawamba, and that is how even they ended up fighting in Kisangani. But of course, since then up to now, both Uganda and Rwandan forces have been involved in plundering, especially mineral resources from Congo, and they mostly do it through these rebel groups that operate in DR Congo. And this is not hearsay. There are so many UN reports actually that have been released. There is one that was released in 2001 that found Ugandan and Rwandan forces culpable for plundering, for looting minerals, timber, and even livestock from DR Congo. So under normal circumstances, of course, the people who were involved in that plunder and who have enriched themselves, of course, they should have been held accountable and helped us in paying that debt. But of course, the commander-in-chief is the president of Uganda, and the soldiers who were operating under him at that time. J.J. Odongo was the army commander. Kazini was involved. Major General Moses Sentongo Diba was involved. Kale Kaihula was involved. Dr. Phil was involved, and so many others. And actually, apart from Kazini, all the others are still alive. So maybe these are some of the issues if we had a change of government that would strongly come up in the new government, and they try to pursue that case. Because as long as, of course, the current government is still in charge, it is very unlikely that we can see a very serious case coming up in our courts of law. So even up to now, recently in May 2000, to this year actually, there was the USA sanctioned our African gold refinery, the only gold refinery we've been having in Uganda, which is based in Entebbe, and the argument was that they are involved in illicit movement of gold from DR Congo. And by the way, almost all gold dealers in Uganda have been selling their gold to that factory, which is owned by a Belgian man. So right now, by the way, in the recent month, I frequently review our performance of the economy report. Gold had overtaken coffee as the leading foreign exchange earner, and it was accounting for 44% of our exports, because our total exports had reached last year about $4.5 billion, and the gold alone was responsible for $2 billion. But as we speak now, the latest performance of the economy reports are not reflecting gold as one of our exports, partly because of those sanctions, but also when government imposed taxes on gold here in Uganda, I am told people who were selling gold from Congo through Uganda stopped bringing their gold to Uganda, and they switched to Rwanda and other countries because of the high taxes that were imposed here. So that those two major factors, I think, are responsible for the fact that we no longer now see earnings coming from gold exports. It's like our gold exports have stopped. So, but now back to the question you have asked me about the payment. The payment was agreed upon that Uganda would be, and it was even specifically indicated the payments would be made in September every year to that tune of $65 million up to 2026. And I think it partly explains the financial crisis that our government is facing right now. I have been at the center of working on stories about the financial crisis government is involved in. In the release for the first quarter, they have not even released money for development expenditure. So many projects have stalled because government does not have money. They don't have money. They have actually even gone beyond the statutory requirement for the money they are supposed to get from Bank of Uganda. They got 80 trillion recently from Bank of Uganda. The law requires them known to get more than 10% of the revenue collection, so which should have been about 2.5 trillion, but they got 80 trillion, and actually that is the reason there is a current standoff between the Ugandan government and the donors, IMF, World Bank, and others, and they are insisting, because even before getting the 80 trillion, there was another 3 trillion from Bank of Uganda. Government is supposed to have paid back Bank of Uganda, which government had not paid. So the development partners led by IMF have given a condition to the Uganda government that for them to continue releasing money, their donor support, the Uganda government has to pay back the money to Bank of Uganda that they are supposed to have paid. And that actually explains the current financial crisis that we have, that so many government entities are stranded. Even ministers have been complaining on the floor of parliament that they don't even have money for travel, for operations. Almost government is at a standstill, and the only money that has been released is mainly for payment of wages, and for carrying out government activities, the money is not there. It's like government is at a standstill, and it is because they are having a financial crisis. The bulk of the money, the little money that URA collects now, goes into debt repayment. In the budget for the current financial year, debt repayment budget is the biggest portion of our national budget, accounting for about 35% of the national budget, about 17 trillion. Right now, about almost 70% of the money URA collects goes to debt repayment, and that is the crisis we are in. And I think now the payment to DR Congo of close to 300 billion has worsened the situation. And I think, I don't know how it will end, but we are going to continue in this financial crisis. First of all, our tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest in the world. Africa's average is 16%. Ours keeps oscillating between 11% and 13%. So that also explains that our capacity to pay back the debts is very limited, because our tax to GDP ratio is very low. So that means we do not generate enough revenue that we can use to pay back the debts. In the last financial year, again, when there was a financial crisis, government they resorted to cutting the budgets by 40% across ministries and entities, but also they resorted to more borrowing from the commercial banks here. They borrowed about 5 trillion. But now, this year, the finance minister was explaining to parliament recently that that option was no longer practical to them, because the debt burden has become so big, and yet they have limited resources they can. And when it comes to borrowing from commercial banks, the interest rates are high. It's very expensive to borrow from them. And that explains the current financial crisis the government is involved in.
Thank you so much, Moses Mulondo. You've painted a picture of the implications of this payout in the broader scheme of things, and what does that mean? Why we are where we are at the moment. And in the middle of the explanation, we were joined by Councillor Edgar Tavares. It's good to have you again here on Acfim Talks. And I did introduce you already, but let me bring you in here to weigh in on this matter. I hope, Councillor Edgar, you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. I want to bring you in on this matter, to weigh in on this matter. Moses Mulondo has partly touched some of the names behind what happened in Congo 20 years ago. And me as a Ugandan, and I'm sure there are many others like me, who would be wondering, okay, is there any way of recovering some of that money from the individuals who are directly held culpable for what happened in Congo? Or I know this much, you made a case that we were sued as a country, but internally here, is there a way, as Ugandans, we can now pass on the burden to those individuals who still live to contribute or to pay off this debt? Because it's quite unfair for me to be dragged into this kind of payment. And as a country, we suffer, just as Mond has painted the picture of how our economy is struggling. I don't know whether.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Edgar, are you there? Edgar, are you there?
My internet connection ain't that good. I've tried to shift between. You can.
I think Edgar is
You can hear me?
on the call, but not yet logged on properly to follow the discussions. But let me, as Edgar comes on set, as Edgar gets his mind on the discussions, let me throw this back to Dismas, because for me until now, I'm still struggling to make sense of why those individuals, we know them, they live in Uganda, they live with us, some of them are rich, courtesy of the loot. Why isn't there a possibility, isn't there a way of making them pay and not transfer this burden to Ugandans?
Felix, at the time of when the Commission of Inquiry was instituted by the government, and they found, they know the individuals, they know the people that were high on the agenda, they know the culpability of the individuals, but you see, majority of them are military officers. They are people all related to the army. They went in Democratic Republic of Congo as part of the UPDF. It is not like they themselves one morning woke up and walked into DRC and started doing what they were doing. So under the cover, if I am a country like DR Congo, or even indeed I want to get back my reparation, I wouldn't go for individuals, because those individuals came in the name of UPDF and fighting a war on behalf of Uganda, like Moses was explaining the different factions that we are supporting. It's unfair, of course. I would have loved a situation in which those individuals, some of them whom Moses names, individuals like Kahindo Tafire and people like, all those army officers, senior army officers that were involved, for them to be able to account to the Ugandans and say why they did what they did. They did it. We didn't send them to loot. We sent them to go and fight a war on behalf of the UPDF. So to that extent, what I'm trying to define, the parameters I'm trying to give you, is that as the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, cannot sue individuals, it sues states. It was set up purposely to be able to deal with the disputes between states. So what individuals did is a matter internal to Uganda. So we need to be able to pursue it. Maybe Edgar, who is the legal mind here, can give us whether there is a possibility that these people can be sued in the courts of Uganda, and we'll be able to get at least, even if it's not the entire 325, at least we get part of that amount of money that they looted, because some of them have property, whether we can attach some of their property, and we'll be able to offset some of the expenses that we are incurring as taxpayers, which really is quite unfair, like I said previously.
Thank you so much. Councillor Edgar, can you hear me now? Okay, let's go for a break as we sort out Councillor Edgar. When we come back, we'll pick it up from there, whether we have we can have a mechanism of internally here making the culprits pay. Let's go for a break, and then we'll be back in a short while.
My people, a cup of coffee, please. There is tea, everything. Snacks are on the way.
Your thanks, but the reason that's why we are here, our people need those different services. We at least need an ambulance at every center.
My sub-county is the forest. We used to depend on the former MPs. But when he lost his elections, he took away his pay.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
Use your budget as a district to procure the ambulances.
If I could, I would. But unfortunately, government operates differently.
What are you saying, Chairperson? This is very serious and urgent.
Yes. And why are they called local leaders then?
Local government.
You people, who sent you here?
I know, of course. We are concerned citizens who are watching people dying every day.
We've lost our beloved ones just because of poor health services.
Something has to be done.
You are right. Something has to be done, and very fast.
Yes.
That's transport for you. Go back.
But
All your concerns are taken care of. I will handle.
But
Have a
Chairman,
safe journey.
Thank you so much.
but this man seems to undermine our cause as to why we're here.
No, don't misunderstand me. This is just transport, no strings attached.
Chairman, we came here to discuss and find solution to our problems. But it seems you don't want to engage with us. Let's go and mobilize people, and you'll see how serious we are.
Good citizens, let us always hold our leaders accountable. Leadership is a service, not a privilege.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
You're still watching Acfim Talks, and welcome back from the short break. We are still discussing the payment of DRC reparation costs, which happened this week. We paid the first installment, which is to a tune of 250 billion Uganda shillings, that is 65 million US dollars to DRC Congo. We are expected to pay another installment for the next remaining 4 years. Looks like every 1st of September, Uganda will have to dig deep in its pockets and pay DRC Congo for the reparation costs, given the judgment that was passed by the Hague-based court, International Court of Justice, finding us culpable for the incursions in Congo. Before we went for the break, I wanted to bring in Councillor Edgar Tavallo, but when we have him, I'll throw that question to him, because I'm trying to see whether there is a window for us as Ugandans to pass on that burden to those directly held responsible, since investigations have pointed to specific names. Let me bring in here Moses. Moses, you've painted a picture that if any Ugandan is concerned, should pick interest in this case. One, I'm still baffled why the media has not necessarily reported on this matter very well to give it the attention it deserves, because this touches taxpayers' money, but it also relates to the current crisis government is facing in terms of financing public goods, financing public services. So we wonder why it's not been given the attention it deserves. But also, as you weigh in on that matter, should we expect every 1st of September, that quarter, Ugandans, should we expect to struggle in terms of accessing public services and goods, because we will be servicing another debt that we are committed to due to our adventure games we played in Congo?
Okay, of course, from the terms of payment that we are agreed upon, we shall be paying every September, every year. We shall be paying $65 million to DRC. Of course, given our limited resources, that's a huge amount of money. But of course, regarding the media that you're talking about, this is a very sensitive matter. It's a very sensitive matter that if you were to connect the dots and follow the trail, it would lead to the culprits. Of course, are very powerful people in government, and including the president, because he was the one in charge of that deployment as the commander-in-chief. So, of course, there is a limit to which the the media and any other stakeholder can pursue this matter. Like I said, as long as this same government that went to DR Congo more than 20 years ago is still in charge, there is not so much that that can be done about the matter. But of course, also the opposition has not been very strong on this issue. They should have played a role in raising a red flag and trumpeting it, and also the Parliament of Uganda making sure that no similar deployments are done again, because even in the recent past, as you saw, M23 overrunning North Kivu, which was a major concern globally. The force with which M23 overpowered the national army of DR Congo, of course, points to there are even reports that have been released that M23 is being supported by both Uganda and Rwanda, and if we continue following that same trend, we are likely to have another debt to be paid if we continue like that. And these things have been happening in our region. Even in South Sudan, the government of Sudan was supporting rebels fighting Uganda, and Uganda was also supporting rebels fighting the government in Sudan. In DR Congo, there is a rebel group, FDLR, of the Hutus that is fighting the government of Rwanda, and the DRC government is supporting them. So in retaliation, Rwanda is also supporting M23, who are predominantly Tutsi, related to those who are in charge in Rwanda. And so we keep having many such wars in our region which are not necessary. So our stakeholders, the parliament, the government, the civil society, the development partners, I think we need to have a public debate on these deployments that we continue having, even our continued presence in Somalia. Personally, I do not support our continued presence in Somalia, because I am very sure that that war will never come to an end. So it's not sustainable for us to continue staying in Somalia for all these years, and we are having deployments in the Central African Republic and so many other countries. And as a country, with the limited resources that we have, we don't need to continue having such deployments, some of which actually now result in payment of reparations. So that's what I can say.
Thank you so much. Let me bring in here Dismas. Does this arrangement, where we are now indebted to DRC for the next 4 years now, because this year is gone, does it in any way have any consequences on how Uganda relates with the current Kinshasa government? And now that DRC they joined the EAC, or it's of no consequence? But also, as a follow-up on that one, we are still in Congo. So, and partly Moses alluded to it, we are still in Congo. Should we expect so many years down the road, again, at the crossroad where we are paying for our insatiable appetite to loot Congo again?
Like they say, Felix, this region, and in particular, what Moses is alluding to, is that Congo has become a good backyard where we always have to go, and if things are not working very well, if you need to be able to line up your pockets, it's a very good place to go and hunt, partly because of the problems of Congo itself. I think sometime back on this same show we did, Edgar and I did share the extent to which Congo is is seen as a place where anyone can be able to go within a period of time and you are very rich. Congo has about 133 rebel groups. And all these rebel groups, some are for the government, others are against the government. And all of them, they are protecting a particular territory, an area in which that area they are protecting is an area of extraction, of stealing, of unfortunately, the country is so well endowed that everywhere you go, you can even, you can get quick money that can help you, if you want to become very rich quickly. Now, Uganda has a presence in DRC. This time, for the first time, maybe they became aware and they sought permission from Kinshasa, in which they said that we want to come and pursue the ADF. We know that Operation Shuja is still ongoing. So to the extent that possibly they did ask permission, they did know the consequence of the previous one where they didn't ask for permission. But the permission they asked is not permission to loot. They asked permission to pursue the ADF, but you know where those some of our Ugandans, where they go. It's not only that they want to loot minerals, timber. The last batch of the army, I'm certainly sure that both of you remember, they even came back with women, quite a number of them. So it's not only the appetite for the resources that they have other appetites that takes them into some of these countries. Now, whether DRC joined the East African community and whether this, I think initially, if Uganda had been smart, Felix, actually, and I can tell you this from a personal story because I was there, DR Congo was willing to have a negotiation in which the countries of Uganda and Rwanda would be allowed to have an easier way of getting out of, on the case of looting of the one that was before the International Court of Justice. I was in a room in which the negotiations happened. It was in Banjul, the Gambia. And the Rwanda delegation that came for that negotiation had the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General, and a host of other judicial officers from its Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Uganda, we had a junior judicial officer who was sent to go and negotiate on behalf of Uganda. But even that junior officer was not in the room at the point of signing. Rwanda signed an understanding with the DRC that for us, DRC said, we are not going to pursue it since you have accepted and you have agreed that you did something wrong. I can assure you in that room, Felix, the Rwanda delegation came to me because I was sitting outside on they couldn't allow me inside the room where they were seated, but I was seated outside. They came to me and told me, Dismas, can you come and sign on behalf of the Uganda government? I said, I can't sign on behalf of the Uganda government. I'm not a government official. And so I looked for this person, and I won't say the person's name because, I'll keep it at that because this is a senior person right now. And the person, I looked for the person around, I couldn't find her. And eventually when the Congolese, tied up the desks, the table where they were signing, Rwanda had signed and Rwanda was leaving, they said that, so it's only Uganda where the case is going to remain.
Where was the Ugandan representative?
So I was getting to that. So this signing happened around this time. It was about between 11 and midday. And when the delegation left and everybody was leaving, I go out and I see the Ugandan delegate walking heavy with bags. And I asked her, where have you been? She said, hey, I had been shopping. She even spoke in Runyankore and said I had been shopping. I looked at this person and like in my heart, I was saying, you just don't know what you have done in terms of letting down a country called Uganda. So you wonder why you send a junior judicial officer who, even when the presence was needed, was not available in the room to sign, but had gone shopping. So we shouldn't blame ourselves. We should blame the system that we have inherited, which can't be able to have foresight of understanding and saying something wrong is going to happen, and therefore we are reaping where we sowed, Felix. We should have sorted it at that time, but unfortunately we never did.
Wow, it's quite painful. Really quite painful. You're still watching Acfim Talks, and you can be part of these conversations. You can send in your questions, clarifications, and be part of this conversation. Just use our social media platforms, and we'll be able to. I'll be able to direct these questions to any of these.
I can see Edgar is on.
Yes, Edgar, you are finally here, both in.
Sure, I am available.
Sure. Edgar, you
I hope
been having
you
a very
can
interesting conversation. Good. We've been having a very interesting conversation, and there's a specific question I want you to answer from your, given your authority when it comes to legal matters. Uganda was sued as a country, but as a taxpayer and as an individual who didn't participate in the looting, and like many other Ugandans out there, we are asking ourselves, is there a way, is there a window, is there an opportunity for us to transfer internally, to transfer this burden to individuals that were held culpable and liable for what happened in Congo? Because some of them are known. I think Molondo gave us a couple of names. Some of them are known and they're still living, and probably some of their wealth can be tracked back to what they did in Congo. So the bigger question is, why not punish them internally, hold them liable and culpable internally, recover a bit of what they stole so that we can pay back, and the burden is not collectively transferred to everybody who didn't benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There is a new word that is emerging in Ugandan parlance. So I'm afraid that under the law, we have very little recourse under Ugandan law. Because they were acting under the authority of the commander-in-chief. And as such, they committed those offenses in the course of their employment. However, under common law, and it's a gray area, rather not common law, international customary law, where you can have reparations for gross abuse of human rights, under international humanitarian law, being transferred to the individuals. And like I said, that is international law, not domestic law of Uganda. Now, under the ICC statute, which sets a date from which reparations or crimes under international law which is, I think, 2005. It was enacted in 2003, but the cut-off date is 2005. So the case as is in the compensation of the DRC. These were offenses committed between 1996 and 2003. So I'm afraid under Ugandan law, we don't have much recourse, in which case you and I should pay our taxes regularly. We should pay our taxes regularly But in countries like Belgium, the United States, and the United Kingdom, there's emerging jurisprudence that goes after individuals and their properties. But it's still a very gray area. Now, our recourse is to do politics. Lobby the EU, lobby the United States, and other countries with very liberal approaches towards the deepening of the rule of law, like South Africa, I believe Kenya, like India, the territory of Hong Kong, and many other common law jurisdictions. I'm also aware under Dutch common law, there are individual liabilities that arise from doing work in the course of employment, but you go a frolic of your own. In other words, outside the ambit of instructions you have been given. But like Dismas did submit, we went into the DRC without clearance of the parliament. So we do not know what instructions were given to these officers. The fact that they went scot-free and they have not answered for their actions, we leave it speculation. So as it were, we can lobby the United States and those other jurisdictions I've talked about and have sanctions imposed on those individuals. And what do sanctions mean? They come after their properties in those territories. They can't use the international banking system. Even Visa cards and Union Pay, Express, and most banks would write to them that they can't hold their accounts anymore. In which case they would only be left with using MTN money, mobile, and Airtel money, and using their mattresses and pillows to keep the money. Mind you, the sanctions do come after their family. I'm emphasizing this because we, the so-called elite, and I'm using that word very carefully. I don't like using it. The word should actually be the intelligentsia. With the intelligence, it's incumbent upon persons like Dismas, Mr. Molondo, and myself to safeguard and deepen the rule of law. We are supposed to be the vanguards for calling public officials, errant public officials to order. And a system, a democracy can only be as strong as its checks and balances. So where a person like Dismas, myself, and Mr. Molondo step away from that space, then impunity sets in like we have on this occasion. So, like I said, it's really a gray area, and we've not had litigation on that. But that does not mean that we do not have recourse in that direction. I beg to submit, dear Felix.
Thank you so much.
Felix, before we run out of time, there is something very important I have remembered.
Okay. As we wrap up.
Yes. In the 1960s, we all remember the 1966 crisis. The major spark of that crisis, actually, there was a motion moved by Daudi Ocheng, which was based on an allegation that Dr. Milton Obote and Idi Amin had received the payment from illicit trade. I mean, illicit gold, ivory, and coffee that had been given to them by rebel groups they were supporting that were fighting the government of Mobutu Sese Seko. That motion was debated and even passed in parliament. They were actually attempting to impeach Obote. And that is what sparked off the 1966 crisis. This time, there is, at least at that time, there was even no international court ruling. There was just an allegation. But this time, there is even an international court ruling.
Mr. Mulumba, just a quick one, just a quick recap.
Yes.
There was a commission of inquiry headed by Justice Delestang. Justice Wambuzi was the secretary to that commission in 1966, and it cleared Obote and Idi Amin of those allegations. It's a very long topic. I've discussed it before, I think without you, but this much was part of the discussion. But they exonerated Obote and Idi Amin, to be fair to them. But on this occasion, our people, the names you are mentioning were actually fingered.
Yes, you are actually, Edgar, you are confirming the point I was making, that at that time, there was even no court ruling, but there was an attempt to impeach the president. But this time, we even have an international court ruling with compelling evidence, and we have not seen any similar attempt to impeach the president. That is the point I wanted to make.
Your point is
I
observed.
much obliged, Mr. Bond. I'm sorry I interrupted. I wonder why Dismas is not laughing that hard.
I'm laughing internally.
Dismas should miss some of these things, and he's denying us the knowledge.
I'll take first. That's interesting, Moses. I'm giving each one of you a minute for your parting shots. What do we make of this? How do we get out of this? Just your conclusion remarks. And I'll start with Dismas. Your parting shots.
I mean, we are cooked. Like Edgar said, I liked the last part of Edgar's that we pay taxes on time, so that we can be able to clear this debt. There's nothing else we can do.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is nothing else we can do. I really thought there was a way out of this. Edgar, your submission deflates my hopes that probably I would find a scapegoat known to be held liable for paying for what I didn't steal. But I'm in it. Indeed, we are cooked. Let me come to you, Edgar. Your parting shots.
No, my parting shot, I used to associate myself wholly with the Dismas' submission. Pay your taxes on time so that we meet our debt obligation to the DRC.
Wow, that's not what our viewers out there would want to hear, but that's what it is. Moses, apart from reminding us that if there was any bold Ugandan who would pursue the path of impeaching, your parting shots.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate Acfim for these discourses that you keep organizing for us. They are good for our country. I just want to encourage you to explore taking these discourses to the Twitter spaces. I was recently a panelist in one of the Twitter space discourse on the computer misuse bill, and the turn-up of participants was over 1,000. So I humbly implore you to explore taking these discourses to the Twitter spaces. I'm sure the impact will be much bigger. But I once again thank you, and I would like to ask you to keep up this spirit of organizing these discourses. It is good for our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And once again, thank you for always honoring our invitations. That was, with me, I had Edgar Tabaro, who is a lawyer and partner at Karohanga Tabaro Associates. I also had Dismas Nkondo, who is the Executive Director of Atrocities Watch Africa, and Moses Mulondo, who is the President Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, we were discussing payment of DRC reparation costs. We should shoulder this burden, and it's clear that we should pay our taxes in time and be able to meet the obligations. Come next year, same time September, we'll be paying another installment of $65 million US. Quite unfortunate. And I'm leaving it at that. Your host, Felix Kafuma. Till next time, same time. Bye-bye. Take care. God bless.